Have you ever just looked at something and wondered, huh, why does that happen? Or, what if I did this instead? That little spark, that moment of curiosity, that's where every single great discovery begins. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take that simple question and forge it into a seriously powerful tool, the hypothesis. So here's our game plan. First, we'll get straight on what a hypothesis actually is, the educated guess. Then we'll take it apart piece by piece to see its core ingredients. After that, I'm going to give you a step-by-step blueprint for making your own. We'll even check out a few different styles in the Hypothesis Hall of Fame, and we'll wrap up with a checklist to make sure your hypothesis is absolutely rock solid. All right, let's dive right in. Before we can build a really powerful hypothesis, we've got to understand the bedrock it's built on. So first things first, what in the world is a hypothesis? At its absolute core, a hypothesis really just starts with that feeling we all get. It's the official scientific way of asking those why and what if questions that just kind of pop into your head when you see something interesting. Okay, so a hypothesis is basically an educated guess, and that word, educated, is key. It's not some random shot in the dark. It's a prediction that's based on something you already know or something you've observed. I actually love where the word comes from. It's from the Greek hypothesis, which literally means to place under. And that's the perfect way to think about it. It's the foundation you lay down before you even think about building your experiment. It's the starting block for any real investigation. So if a hypothesis is our foundation, what's it made of? How do we build it? Well, it turns out every strong hypothesis is made from the same key components. Let's break down its anatomy. The absolute building blocks of any hypothesis are its variables. These are just the things, the elements, the concepts, whatever, that you're actually going to test and measure. They're the moving parts of your whole setup. And these variables come in two main flavors. First, you've got the independent variable. This is the cause. It's the one thing you are going to purposely change or control. So in our plant example, it's how much water you give it. Then you've got the dependent variable. This is the effect. It's the thing you're going to sit back and watch, the thing you measure to see if your change actually did anything. In this case, that's how much the plant grows. So just remember, you change the independent to see the effect on the dependent. Simple as that. And here is the magic formula for putting those two together. The classic if-then statement. If I do this, then I predict this will happen. It's such a simple structure, but it's so powerful because it forces you to spell out that cause and effect relationship you think you're going to see. Okay, we know what the parts are. Now for the fun stuff. Let's get practical and walk through the actual blueprint for writing a great hypothesis from scratch. This 5-step process will take you from just a vague idea to a really solid, testable statement. You start with a focused question. Then, and this is super important, you do your homework, a little research to see what other people have already figured out. This is what makes your guess educated. Next, you nail down your variables. What are you changing and what are you measuring? Then you slot it all into that if-then sentence. And finally, and this might be the most crucial step, you refine it. You make it sharper, clearer, and more specific until it's crystal clear and ready for action. Now, you might be thinking a hypothesis is a one-size-fits-all kind of thing, but not really. Depending on the kind of question you're asking, you might need a slightly different style. So you've got your simple hypotheses, right? Just linking two variables. Or you can have complex ones that juggle a few different things at once. But honestly, in the world of formal research, the most important pair you need to know is the null and the alternative hypothesis. The null is basically the default boring assumption that there's no effect going on, like saying sunlight doesn't do anything for plant growth. The alternative is your idea, your actual prediction, the thing you're hoping to prove, like that sunlight does have an effect. Let's really zero in on this pair because it's so important. The null hypothesis, which we call H0, is the default. It's the nothing to see here position. And what's interesting is that in an experiment, your main goal is to gather enough evidence to be able to reject it, to disprove it. The alternative hypothesis, or H1, that's your baby. That's your actual research prediction. It's the statement that you're trying to support, and you do it by knocking down the null hypothesis. So we know what a hypothesis is, we know how to build one, and we've seen the different types. Now for the final piece of the puzzle. How do we make it not just good, but great? Here's a fantastic checklist for you. I call it the 5E rule. A really strong hypothesis has to be explicit. No room for confusion. It's got to be evidence-based. Remember, not a wild guess.
It has to be ex ante, which is a fancy way of saying you make it before you see any data. And this one is a huge deal. It should also have explanatory power, meaning it offers some clue as to why this might be happening. And finally, the big one, it must be empirically testable. If you can't actually test it with real-world data, it's not a scientific hypothesis, period.
And yeah, about that ex ante rule, this is exactly why it is so critical. There's a major scientific sin called harking. It stands for hypothesizing after the results are known, and you have to avoid it at all costs. It's basically like shooting an arrow at a blank wall and then walking up and drawing the bullseye around where it landed. It completely defeats the whole purpose of the scientific process. You always have to set your target before you shoot. So, as you can see, a strong hypothesis is so much more than just a guess or a formality. It's the roadmap. It's the blueprint for your entire investigation. It tells you what to look for, what to measure, and it gives your work a clear, focused purpose from the very beginning all the way to the end. And it all comes back to that one little moment of curiosity, doesn't it? A simple question about the world. But now you have the tools to take that question and turn it into a powerful, testable prediction. So the only real question left is, what educated guess are you going to test next?